Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, it's been 5 years since the COVID-19 lockdowns. An album made during that time is getting a re-release on vinyl.
What you can't get across with a record is the sense of feeling that it might be over, right? That this might be a plague, might be the plague, because at that time, there was no cure and no vaccine.
A Kentucky tattoo artist practices traditional tattooing and traditional music. He says they're not too different.
I am executing a design that originated over 100 years ago at this point. Those are like the folk songs.
And what keeps people so fascinated with cryptids?
If you believe that Mothman is real, a lot of people will agree with you. So I think it's like a thing we can come together and enjoy.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support provided by the COPD Foundation, presenting health screening events April 7 in Portsmouth and April 8 in Huntington. More information, copdf.co/events.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. 5 years ago, the COVID lockdowns kept a lot of people out of public spaces. And a lot of artists use that time to create, like the Cornelius Eady Trio. The group is organized around Cornelius Eady, a poet and professor at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, whose writing has been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. With the help of musicians Lisa Liu and Charlie Rao, Eady puts his words to music. The trio recorded an album of songs about the pandemic. It's called Don't Get Dead, Pandemic Folk Songs by the Cornelius Eady Trio. The album now has been re-released on vinyl by Whitesburg, Kentucky's June Apple Recordings. Cornelius Eady, Charlie Rao, thank you all for coming on to speak with us on Inside Appalachia.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
In the pandemic, especially those early days during the lockdown, when everybody's kind of getting their sea legs and there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of people had the experience of being isolated and just seeing their friends only through screens. What led y'all to make the jump to making songs about that?
Necessity. I mean, truly, just necessity. It's that or you go crazy. If I was a painter, I probably would have stayed isolated in my studio and painted. What I did instead was to simply just pick up the guitar and just start to write songs about what it felt like to be in that moment, which was a horrible moment. It was a way of self-defense. It was a way of just trying to get some handle on it, to try to keep some sanity, and also to keep us going as a band.
Let's listen to a track from that album. It's called The Misery Bed.
Laid in the misery bed, the rain is falling, the pain is peeling. Laid in the misery bed, Lord, who put me in a misery bed? Oh Lord, who put me in a misery bed? What did I do? What God said, oh Lord, who put me in the misery bed?
On the Bandcamp page, you have a Corona diary in the liner notes. Would you mind reading that?
Corona diary. These days, you want the poem to be a mask. Soft veil between what floats invisible but known in the air. You've just read that there's a singer you love who might be breathing their last, and wish the poem could travel, unobtrusive, as poems do, from the page to the brain, a fan's medicine. Those of us who are lucky enough to stay indoors for the salary count the days by press conferences. For others, there is always the dog and the park and the dog. A relative calls. How you doing? Are you a ghost? And the buds emerge on time for their brief duty. The poem longs to be a filter, but in floats spring's insistence. We wait. As I was reading the poem, I also remembered, it made me remember that my sister also appears in this poem. A relative calls. Are you, how you doing? Are you a ghost? It's my big sister, Gloria, who died not of COVID but of a brain tumor 2 years ago, and that was when I knew it was serious. When my sister called to see how I was doing, I knew that was her actually in one way just saying, just in case, just in case I never get to see you again, I also want to say hello. And then I knew how bad the virus actually was. I knew things were actually serious. Also, probably helped spark the song "Thanks," right? Which is like the next to the last song on the project, where basically it is about saying goodbye. There are people calling in and saying goodbye, and or leaving an email and stuff like that because you never know, right? You never know, and suddenly you're very aware of the fact that death is at the door, or very, very close, and it could happen to you or it could happen to somebody else. I mean, you haven't talked to them in a few years, you might want to say goodbye to them.
You're right. That poem concludes, "We wait." And those days felt endless at the time, but time passed. And the virus is still around, but the pandemic has kind of faded into the rearview mirror. And a lot of those years have kind of been memory hold, where people want to get back to, quote, normal and just move past them. Your songs provide a document of that time. So when you listen back, what do you hear in those songs now?
Oh, well, what I hear is again, sort of the memories of what it felt like to actually be there. What you can't get across with a record, is the sense of feeling that it might be over, right? That this might be a plague, might be the plague, because at that time there was no cure and no vaccine, and people were dropping like flies. Feeling that maybe, just maybe you hit the jackpot, and this is going to be like the plague, and it's really going to wipe a lot of people out, which it did, and you might be next. And that feeling of dread, that feeling that maybe you're not going to be able to push through this, that this might be something you may not get through, that not just you may not get through, but maybe the culture may not get through. Also, how confusing it was with all the different information that was coming in. First, you didn't need a mask, and then suddenly you did need a mask, and then suddenly you needed to wash your hands 15 times a day, and then you didn't really need to do it 15 times a day. Oh, I even got deliveries. Deliveries have to sit on the porch for 15 minutes so the sun could kill all the. I mean, it was all this stuff that was going on, all this panic that was going on, but panic not in a way that was a crowd stampeding for a cliff. It was sort of like this quiet dread among the neighborhoods, among the houses. All I could do was write. I mean, I wasn't going to cure anything. I wasn't going to. All I could do was write, and hopefully just keep at it. And so all of that comes back.
This collection of songs y'all recorded during the pandemic was released in 2021 under the title Don't Get Dead, Pandemic Folk Songs by the Cornelius Eady Trio. And now it's getting a vinyl re-release. So how does that feel to get this recognition a few years after the fact, especially with these particular songs and the topics?
It feels wonderful. It feels wonderful that the record company was so supportive. They've been so supportive of this project from the start, and I'm it just thrills me to feel that they like the material so much that they are allowing us to do this limited vinyl release of it. It's great to hear the songs again.
How did this experience with the pandemic and recording these specific songs, did it bring any permanent changes to the group and how y'all work together?
Charlie?
Well, it was kind of interesting because we all had sort of basic recording setups, just from being professional musicians. But at least on my end, I had recorded my own music, which was just solo acoustic guitar before, so I was used to doing that, but just that. So I had never mixed or mastered or anything or had to, collaborate with people remotely the way we were doing it. What's fun about listening back to this record is we were figuring out how to do it in every possible way, not just conceptually, but technically. We were figuring out how do we mix? How do we, I had to learn how to mix and master sort of through this project. So making this record let all of us know it's like, hey, we can do this. We can keep doing this. Even when we can meet in person, we can meet in person and perform, but we can get ideas down and we are getting better at it. So it kind of changed. It added a level to the project where we used to only go into studios to record and then perform live. Now we can go into studios and record. We can record ourselves and we can perform live. So it kind of added another layer to expressing Cornelius's work. And I feel like having more control over how the music is produced makes it more authentic and it makes it more personal. And another way that Cornelius will write a long form song, in the folk tradition or the Appalachian tradition, even the storytelling format of the words are the focus of the song. And the music is supposed to be, in my opinion, the way I look at it, a vehicle for the message and the intention of the words. And when you do that, you don't have the option to copy and paste and cut things up. You have to play it. You have to tell the story with the words. You can do a lot of takes of a song like that, but you can't do a whole lot of editing to it because it just doesn't work. Having the opportunity to sort of get back to that style of recording was really satisfying for me as a musician, to play these songs and listen to the words and react to them while I'm playing them, knowing that I have to play the whole song. There are studio editing capabilities, obviously, but I just feel like in the session work that I do, people jump at the point of, let's do a bunch of takes, chop up all the takes and make a super take. That's a very common way of going about it in the work that I've done, and I've never been a fan of that. So for me, it's been really great. One of the silver linings of recording this way is that we got back to actually recording songs. You have to play them. They have to sound good, the end. And if it doesn't, do it again, which is what I personally prefer. And I feel like that does come through on this record, and it is fun to listen back to those songs and think that that's what we did, and that's part of the message. It's part of making the music an actual personal vehicle to deliver what Cornelius is saying.
No complaints, Charlie, really. Not at all.
So we've talked about the songs and the moment and the mindset and the process. What do these songs collected now have to tell us about life today in 2025?
When you think back to when that happened, it feels like it was in a different universe when all of that was happening. And I like going back and listening to it. This is kind of a weird way to put it, but I like re-experiencing what it felt like because we're still here.
Well, I was just thinking of the title song, actually, Don't Get Dead, which the title comes from a poet friend of mine who used to sign off her emails to me during the pandemic with, Don't Get Dead. And she did it enough times that I suddenly realized, that's not only is it might be a good title for a song, maybe a title for the project overall, but also a good motto for what was going on. That basically, you will get through this. Don't get dead. We will get through this. And there's someplace else to be that's on the other side of this. It really is about that. It's about that survival and getting through it and knowing, even if you're losing people on the side and on the way, there's still going to be a way to get through.
Cornelius Eady, Charlie Rao, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us. We really enjoyed it.
The album is Don't Get Dead, Pandemic Folk Songs by the Cornelius Eady Trio. It's available from June Apple Recordings.
Me and my baby sitting in the rain, waiting on the sun to shine.
Later in the show, a Kentucky tattoo artist make space in a shop for another art form, traditional string band music. You're Inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, educating the people of our region and beyond for more than 150 years. More information at concord.edu.
Appalachia was once a Democratic stronghold, but since the 90s, it's flipped. In parts of eastern Kentucky, the Republican presidential ticket won around 80% of the vote. So what happened? Like a lot of things in central Appalachia, it boils down to coal. Here's Scott Tong from WBUR's Here and Now.
Coal is the heartbeat here, something many Kentucky musicians like Merle Travis sing about and play about. Just about everyone's family story includes miners.
Both of my grandfathers were coal miners. One of my great-grandfathers was a coal miner.
I've had uncles that was contract underground miners. My dad was a miner all of his life. My dad's father was a miner. My wife's father was a miner.
My uncle did welding for the coal mines. My dad was a security guard for them.
My uncles, my great-grandfather, it just goes deep, deep, deep.
Listen closely and you hear a pride, like the pride of old steel mill workers in Pittsburgh or auto workers in Detroit. To get the long story here, I head to an underground mine tour in Harlan County, an old mining stronghold. In the parking lot, a big sign declares, if you don't like coal, don't use electricity. For $8, I get a seat on an orange rail car that runs underground through an entrance called Portal 31. And inside, a polished video on a supersized screen gives off a spiritual vibe. A booming narrator says Kentucky coal mining began when the country began in the late 1700s.
The search for coal would eventually lead here, to this place in the Cumberland Valley.
Kentucky coal burned to make electricity across the country, to heat steel smelters that helped America win world wars. That is, during the boom times. Then came the Depression in the 1930s. And then came machines that took over a lot of the work. It's all on the tour.
Our next stop is 1960. 3 years before Portal 31 will be shut down forever. There's a machine that's making big changes. One machine that does the work that an entire crew did before.
I'm on this tour with sociologist and author Arlie Hochschild of UC Berkeley. She spent 7 years here, on and off, researching a book on social and political change in Appalachian Kentucky. It's just out. It's called Stolen Pride, Loss, Shame, and the Rise of the Right. Hochschild says in coal's heyday, miners joined politically powerful unions allied with the Democratic Party, and they wore special uniforms underground.
The uniforms involved wearing a red kerchief, and they were called rednecks.
Oh, that's where the term comes from.
That's right. And what it actually meant is we're union.
At the heart of the coal story is the risks that miners take. Their bravery, their sacrifice.
And listen to a story that I'll relate to thee.
That sacrifice was captured in this 1937 song. Sarah Ogan Gunning was the wife of a miner dying of lung disease.
Coal mining is the most dangerous work in our land today, with plenty of dirty slaving work and very little pay.
These risks were largely undertaken by men, like Matt Compton. He works at a mine that's still open, about an hour away. Compton is 72 years old, still working underground, now as a boss.
It's a dangerous occupation. and you get so nasty and dirty. I just felt like it shouldn't be a place for a woman. I hope that don't make me sound chauvinist, but I've worked where people's been killed, you know. I had a close friend of mine, and the roof fell and killed him and his partner.
Compton began his career shoveling coal by hand, and then he became an electrician, keeping the underground machines going. Having lost friends in the mines, he warns his own workers not to cut safety corners.
I always tried to tell my underground people that if they ever get hurt taking a shortcut, I said, I will make sure that I personally try to help your wife find her a smart new husband. Give them something to think about. Because you take a shortcut, a lot of times shortcut gets you killed.
Compton is a coal believer in many ways. Like many here, he's a lifelong churchgoer who is thankful for coal, a blessing that to him the elites want to shut down. He says he cares about the environment as much as anybody else.
God provided this for us. I want to be a good steward of that. But when you see the green people, I'll call them that because most people refer to them as that. The green people, they would love to shut down any kind of fossil fuel production.
Production that saved the American economy in the 1970s. That's when the country faced an oil embargo and a huge need for energy. So the mines of Appalachian Kentucky, they thrived. And that created overnight millionaires, not far from Matt Compton's mine. The mine owners got rich, miners got raises, suppliers got contracts. Andrew Scott is the Republican mayor of the aptly named town of Coal Run.
That was not uncommon at all to see someone coming to our public school and their father landing his helicopter on the football field and the student getting out of the helicopter walking into class. One time the football field was a little too wet and they had 3 or 4 different helicopters just hovering over the field to make it dry because our team actually wasn't playing very well in the mud.
Appalachian coal jobs peaked in the 80s and 90s, and they have been plummeting ever since. As the story goes here, a war on coal was declared by one Barack Obama. Here is candidate Obama during his 2008 campaign, talking about his climate plan with journalists at the San Francisco Chronicle.
If somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
To be clear, Obama's plan to punish coal-fired power plants was never realized. In eastern Kentucky, lost coal jobs for many reasons. Machines took over a lot of the work. Coal plants got hurt by clean air rules passed in the 90s. And Appalachian coal struggled to compete against cheap natural gas from Pennsylvania and cheap coal from Wyoming. It's complicated. But to Mayor Scott, the narrative here is clear.
What they're hearing is coal is dirty. Well, I work in coal all day, would say one coal miner. Does that mean he's dirty too? Does that mean his family's dirty? Does that mean his money's dirty? Does that mean what's putting his children through college is dirty?
Politics, he says, is what people perceive being abandoned by Obama and embraced by Donald Trump. In 2016, candidate Trump came to Appalachia pledging to bring the mining jobs back.
For those miners, get ready because you're going to be working your asses off, all right? Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
That appealed here. Now, to be clear, most coal jobs have not come back, but Trump delivered hope in a place with no backups to coal jobs. 40-something Gary Bentley was laid off from a local mine.
I chased the industry myself. In 2012, I moved to Western Kentucky, did job interviews in New Mexico because I thought mining was the only job I would ever do for the rest of my life. I actually know a few people, and they went from driving 20 minutes to a local coal mine to driving 3-4 hours one way just to have the bare minimum coal job.
Like many, Bentley eventually left the industry for factory work, and then he opened a heating and cooling company in another part of the state. He's part of the Appalachian brain drain. Now, Bentley is a Democrat, but he agrees with Republican Mayor Scott that the coal crisis in eastern Kentucky became an opportunity for the GOP. And in his mind, local Democrats lost the plot, focusing on abortion, gay rights, gender identity.
conservative Christian people, they definitely don't want to publicly come out and support it or vote for it. Now, all of those things are important and should be addressed, so I would not want the Democratic Party to shy away from it, but I do think they're going to have to find other issues and be like, is it more important to have a gender-neutral bathroom, or is it more important for you to have a job?
Ronald Reagan famously said in the 1960s, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me." I hear a lot of that sentiment here. The question is, why the fervor for Donald Trump, a New York City developer with no blue-collar roots? Republican Mayor Andrew Scott sees him as a kind of a good bully.
You could very much argue that from a perspective from the coal miners that Barack Obama was the bully, right? And you have Trump come around the corner and be like, hey, what are you doing to these people? I want to protect them.
There's a sense of being bullied and shamed across rural America, says sociologist Arlie Hochschild. She says many conservatives feel that their American dream has stalled and that others are cutting in front of them to achieve the dream, and that Donald Trump taps into that.
There was a cultural populism that really has lit a fire. And one man I talked to said, oh, Donald Trump, he's like lightning in a jar. What happened? Good people, down times, shame. And I believe in a certain way that Donald Trump has managed to speak to that feeling.
The feeling of being ignored and forgotten. To Hochschild, Trump is hearing them, and they are responding with their loyalty and their votes.
That was Scott Tong of NPR's Here and Now. That segment originally aired in September. We've posted a link on our website, wvpublic.org. John Haywood of Whitesburg, Kentucky, says he got his first guitar and his first tattoo when he was about 13 years old. These days, Haywood is the proprietor of Parlor Room Art and Tattoo in downtown Whitesburg. It's a place where some people get inked up, and some play traditional music. It's a place unlike any other, as Zach Harold reports.
From the time John Haywood was a kid, he had two loves, art and music. When all his cousins were playing sports, John just wanted to draw and play guitar. Eventually, he figured out a way to marry his two loves. After all his favorite rock and rollers were covered in tattoos.
And I started drawing tattoos on myself and on my friends, and with markers and fancy pens. It got to where people would ask me to draw a tattoo on them in school, and with just like a marker. And we were so fascinated by it that when the opportunity came to get a real one, we jumped.
Well, real is a relative term. It was a real tattoo in the sense that John still has it. It was a little less than real because he got it from a friend's older brother who did it using some purloined art supplies.
He used sewing needle and thread and India ink that I got from my middle school. Between the art department and the home make department, I was able to get everything I needed to do a tattoo.
Luckily, John's career as a thief was short-lived. His passion for art was not. He went on to study art at Morehead State University and later in grad school at the University of Louisville. Then, finally out of school and unsure what to do next, John was offered an apprenticeship under Big Daddy Trey Benham, a tattooer in Fort Knox, Kentucky. But big city living grew tiresome after a while. John moved back to eastern Kentucky and, needing a way to make money, started looking for a job as a public school art teacher. Until one fateful conversation with another job candidate.
We were actually in line to do like the drug test, where you pee in the cup and all that. And I was drawing up a design, and the guy said, "Man, if you can draw and all that stuff, why are you doing all this with us? Having to pee in the cup, having to, answer the Board of Education, having to just hope you're going to get hired, and all this." He's like, "Why don't you have your own shop?" And it stuck. I was like, I don't know, why don't I have my own shop? I was apprenticed under a good tattoo artist who was apprenticed under a great tattoo artist, and there's really something to that in tattooing.
So John gave up on the school system. He found a former pharmacy in downtown Whitesburg, Kentucky, and he opened his own shop, the Parlor Room. That was 13 years ago. John's shop has since outgrown its original basement space and now occupies the whole first floor, the walls of which are covered with an overwhelming amount of art, even by tattoo shop standards.
The lobby pretty much serves as kind of an art gallery, just to kind of vibe the place up, make sure there's plenty of designs and flash and inspiration around, because everybody tends to bring in a lot of the same old on the internet, so we try to keep a unique sort of something to kind of get their brains maybe looking at just some art, or maybe looking at some traditional books and stuff like that.
Some of that art is from John. Some is from his kids, his friends, and clients. Some of it is from the shop's other artists. The parlor room now boasts 5 tattooers in all. 2 of them are John's own apprentices.
You can go online and learn, find somebody explaining everything you want to know about this. But what you don't get from that is the importance of learning how to connect with clientele, seeing what they may be going through when they come through the doors.
The parlor room has its own unique way of connecting with clients. Hang around on a slow day and somebody will pick up one of the musical instruments laying around and start an impromptu jam session. If he doesn't have a tattoo gun in hand, John will be right in the middle of it, picking on his banjo. And those banjo stylings are the result of another important apprenticeship in John's life. Around the time he was planning to move back from Louisville, he did an art show here in Whitesburg to sell some of his paintings.
So I was doing a lot of banjo-y kind of paintings too, like old timers playing the banjo. And at some point or another, I did an art show at Apple Shop, and George Gibson came by, saw the art show, and bought a painting or two, and left me with an album of his.
John had been aware of George Gibson for a while at this point. They kept crossing paths at music festivals. John knew George was both an accomplished banjo player and also a historian of the instrument. George learned to play from his neighbors in Knott County, Kentucky, soaking up a regional, traditional banjo style that had largely been forgotten as the instrument came to be associated with commercial bluegrass music.
So he would learn a lot of stuff from people that didn't even own instruments but could play a song or two or remember.
George later moved to Philadelphia and then Florida, becoming a successful businessman. But his love for banjo kept him coming back to Kentucky. When he ran into John at that art show, he saw something in this young artist and offered him a deal. In exchange for 1 painting a year, John could live in a house on George's Knott County property and study banjo with him.
And I was like, oh, there's someone still alive today that still plays this old Knott County style banjo that I'm so fascinated with. We never really did too many lessons. A lesson would be him telling me these stories about the people, or him saying encouraging me to read some kind of book. Or just sometimes me just sitting down on the porch with him while he played.
Through these informal lessons, John began to absorb the banjo styles that George had spent his whole life studying. Now, John doesn't just play banjo between tattoos. He regularly plays gigs and festivals all over Kentucky and beyond. He's appeared on Tyler Childers' gospel album, Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven, and has recorded banjo albums of his own, including one taped right here at the parlor room. While tattoos are usually associated with rock or hip-hop music, John sees a strong connection between his study of banjo and his study of tattooing.
The practice of traditional tattooing is almost exactly like the practice of traditional music. There are designs that were done and executed in the past, of say an eagle done by someone like Sailor Jerry. As a traditional tattooer, when someone wants something like that, I go to that as the reference. I am executing a design that originated maybe 100 years ago, over 100 years ago at this point. Those are like the folk songs.
But whether we're talking about tattoos or banjo, John is careful who he shares these hard-won lessons with.
It's the see me now, hear me later. You ever heard someone say that to you? I had sketchy neighbors there. Got a tattoo machine one time. Stopped me in the middle of the road. Man, how does he ask me how the thing worked? And I told him every single thing about it. You're supposed to keep that secret. You know what I mean? All these secrets. I told him everything about it, stand in the middle of the road, and then said, well, man, later, I'll see you later. I got to go to work. There was so much knowledge. He's not going to understand any of that unless he goes the path of actually trying to figure that out.
It's the same thing with banjo. Sure, the stakes are quite a bit lower. Nobody's getting permanently scarred from a bad rendition of Sally Gooden. But John can't pass down any of this knowledge he's gleaned from years of study.
But it's not going to even matter. It's probably going to waste our time if you're not ready for it.
Here's the thing, though. Artists like John dedicate years of study to their art, learning history and technique. And they bring all of that knowledge to bear, whether they're standing on stage or jabbing ink into somebody's bicep. Yet the whole point of all that practice and all that study and all that work is to create art of such depth that you and I can appreciate it without a lifetime of study. We don't need all that knowledge in our heads or our hands because we can just feel that it's good. That's certainly true with music. Whether you've heard a song before or not, whether you know its history or not, when it's good, you just feel it. And John says it's the same way with tattoos.
It's funny what tattooing does for folks, and it's, you know, when you put something on someone and they walk out of here you see them feeling better about something, and you know, it feels pretty good to know that you can do that for someone.
For Inside Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold in Whitesburg, Kentucky.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. For a video Zach made about parlor room art and tattoo, visit our website, wvpublic.org. Recent flooding in Tennessee may have damaged ancient Native American cave art in Dunbar Cave State Park. Officials now need to figure out how to restore the paintings, while also investigating how the damage happened in the first place. Derek Operly with WKMS has more.
Floodwaters completely submerged the centuries-old Mississippian art in Dunbar Cave State Park, something park leadership says has never happened before. Park manager David Britton says the park is consulting with archaeologists about potential impacts to the cave drawings, but he's bracing for the worst.
We do know that there is a light coating of mud on top of it, but this is 800-year-old charcoal, so anything can be detrimental to it.
The high waters also managed to unmoor the boardwalk built in front of the artwork, and Britton says repairs to infrastructure like that could impact the park's cave tour season. Moving forward, Britton says he hopes to evaluate what caused the higher level of flooding in the cave compared to past years when more precipitation has fallen. I'm Derek Operly in Murray.
In 2023, Tennessee passed a law to limit adult entertainment cabaret shows on public property. Analysts agree the law was meant to specifically target drag shows. Advocates challenged the law. It eventually reached a federal appeals court, which dismissed the challenge in February. Tennessee lawmakers are celebrating that the drag ban remains in place. But WPLN's Mariana Bacchial reports that some LGBTQ advocates also see it as a win.
The drag ban isn't really a drag ban. That's something the Tennessee's ACLU and Attorney General agree on. The Adult Entertainment Act doesn't mention drag, instead referring to adult cabaret that has no artistic value. An appeals court found that Friends of George's, an LGBTQ theater troupe in Memphis, didn't have grounds to challenge the law.
Friends of George has very sexual content in its drag shows, and even that didn't fall within the regulation of the Adult Entertainment Act.
That's Tennessee ACLU Legal Director Stella Yarbrough.
And so other drag performers who have similarly sexual shows can feel comfort in knowing that, like, if Friends of George's performances are not even prescribed by the Adult Entertainment Act or stopped by the Adult Entertainment Act, then other drag performances should not be.
Yarbrough represents other plaintiffs in a separate challenge to the law. That suit in East Tennessee is still ongoing. Since the U.S. Supreme Court has refused to take up the case, the final appeals court ruling could affect the outcome. Mariana Bacallao, WPLN News.
Almost everyone has heard of the Mothman, West Virginia's best-known cryptid. But have you heard of Veggie Man? That's another West Virginia cryptid. And it helped inspire a zine project from the Frank and Jane Gabor West Virginia Folklife Center at Fairmont State University. Producer Bill Lynch spoke with the center's director, Lydia Warren, about the forthcoming publication, which is taking submissions.
Talk about this zine. How did it get started? The idea of it.
Let me think where to start. I guess the genesis of this zine is that we started collaborating with the guys who run the Moth Boys podcast sometime last year. They wanted to have an event called Veggie Man Day at the Folklife Center, and we were like, we are happy to host that. While we were at Veggie Man Day, they had booked all these amazing vendors, all these really cool West Virginia artists to do cryptid and other paranormal themed artwork. So there were like vendors who had dolls made out of felt that were like little cryptid dolls. There were people doing amazing drawings of like Mothman and obviously Veggie Man because it was Veggie Man Day. And Judy Byers, her mentor had been Ruth Ann Music. So Judy Byers was there. She's the founding director of the Folklife Center. And she pulled me aside and she was like, this cryptid thing is really, this is hot. This is a big deal. And I'm like, yes, it sure is. And she was like, you should do the next edition of the journal Traditions that the Folklife Center puts out. She's like, you should do that and include this cryptid stuff or these artists in some way. And I was like, you're right, we should. But, you know, making a journal takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. So I kind of thought, yes, we'll definitely do that, but I can't do it right now. And then shortly after, one of our work study students came to me and told me that she had seen the ghost of Ruth Ann Music in the Folklife Center. Now, Ruth Ann Music had lived in the Folklife Center when she was teaching at Fairmont State, and she actually died in the building. So it's not totally unheard of that someone would see Ruth Ann Music in the building, but I'd never had like a staff member see her. And then after that, my worker, Haley Harvey, was like, you know, we've been kind of fiddling around with doing zines. Why don't we do a zine and put Melody's story about Ruth Ann Music in it? And then I thought, well, that's the idea. We can incorporate all of this. We can do the Ruth Ann Music thing where we are collecting local stories that are paranormal. We can have local artists illustrate it, and, you know, we can give it out for free if we can get a grant to do it. I asked the Moth Boys if they wanted to collaborate on it. So I thought a collaboration would really be perfect because they're kind of tuned in to a different scene than, you know, a university is tuned into. So I asked them if they wanted to collaborate on it. And I was like, I'll write a grant to get a little money so that we can give this out for free. And they were like, yes, do it, whatever it takes.
Cryptids are hot, right? The whole cryptid thing is hot. Why?
Yeah.
Things have really been kind of, you know, very pro Mothman, pro Sasquatch. I mean, the only one who doesn't seem to be having, I would say, a renaissance is the Loch Ness Monster. Why are cryptids so big?
I think a lot of people are kind of thinking about that throughout Appalachia, but I know that one of the reasons they're really big is because of different West Virginia locations and West Virginia cryptids being featured in the Fallout video game. That's a big one. And the different like mountain monsters in the TV shows and different media has really, over the last 10 years, honed in on this stuff. I think that it's something that really allows people to build community. A lot of things are politicized now, and a lot of things are divisive. And a lot of things always have been, but it feels really intense over the last, 10 years. And so cryptids in paranormal stuff, it's almost like a safe topic because no one's going to present you with information that you're then going to have to like fight or be defensive about. If you believe that Mothman is real, I mean, a lot of people will agree with you from every side of the political spectrum, from every side of the social and socioeconomic spectrum. So I think it's like a thing we can come together and enjoy. It's also copyright free, which is one of the reasons that it's in video games and one of the reasons that it's in TV shows. Like, you can't take Batman or other public figures, Hello Kitty. You can't like do whatever you want with them. You can't do whatever you want with Barbie, but you can do whatever you want with Veggie Man. So Veggie Man and all these other cryptids become this like cultural touchstone that we can kind of like, you could write a fan fiction about Mothman or Nessie if you wanted to. Yeah, I think it's also kind of like the last bastion of American weird. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when I was a little kid, I grew up in Massachusetts and I was really into like shipwrecks. And I feel like that's another thing that's like American weird. Like, it's like you could go and see it and you're like, this is kind of crazy. Or is anyone else into this? And I feel like cryptids are a thing that's like one of the last things that hasn't been dispelled or disproven or whatever. You, like, it's okay to go to believe in, like, enjoy, say you've seen and look for cryptids.
The Veggie Man. I'm not familiar really. I'm not familiar with Veggie Man. What is Veggie Man?
Veggie Man is a cryptid that was spotted, I believe, in 1968, around the 60s, in Marion County. He was only seen once, and he came to a gentleman, I believe it was out in the woods, and was like hurt and bleeding and looked very vegetable-ish. And this guy who saw him was sort of scared. He'd had some like UFO encounters before, and he wasn't, I think, comfortable going necessarily to the police about it. So he told Gray Barker, and Gray Barker is like he's a famous UFOologist. And so Gray Barker kind of broke the Veggie Man tale in one of his publications. But since there was only one sighting, it wasn't picked up and run with, and there wasn't like a tragedy or people trying to suppress the information. It was just like, this guy saw it, and he calmly told Gray Barker. And the Moth Boys are how I found out about Veggie Man. They were like, this is our cryptid. Like, this region of West Virginia, like this is our cryptid. We want to do something to celebrate him and all the paranormal stuff that happens here that's maybe overshadowed by other paranormal stuff. So that's the Veggie Man deal.
Expectations for this, and getting the word out. How many pieces are you hoping to, I guess, acquire for this publication for your zine?
We're not sure how many submissions we're going to get, and I thought maybe no one will be interested, but we've already gotten quite a few. And so we're just hoping to maybe have 20 or so stories. One of our goals is that we want to have at least 5 counties represented in the zine. I would love to have 55 counties, but I don't think we have enough money to pay for that much ink. But yeah, we're hoping to have at least 5 counties represented, and ghost tales, cryptid tales, paranormal tales, whatever. We are taking submissions until March 25th, and then we're going to start selecting stories and doing any like editing of typos or things and work with our illustrators. We're hoping to launch the zine at the next Veggie Man Day, so we'll have copies of it for free. And then we're also going to give copies to local libraries so that if people don't get a copy or if they're not anywhere near the Folk Life Center, hopefully they can just like pop into their local library in like McDowell County or wherever and see other people's scary stories. We've gotten a lot of people asking if they can submit fiction and creative writing. And I didn't expect that to be a thing people would want to do. So we're thinking that maybe towards the end of the year, we'll do like another zine that's not true stories, because this one we're trying to focus on things that people believe really happened to them or around them. And we're thinking maybe like a version 2 could be a fiction one. So if it's really popular, which it already seems to be, we're going to just try to keep it going. We like the zine thing.
That was Fairmont State University folklorist Lydia Warren speaking with Bill Lynch. The zine project is called Traditions, the Ghost of Ruth Ann and Other Local West Virginia Lore. If you're interested in submitting your own cryptid tale, you can find a link to the Folk Life Center on our website. Also, Lydia might have sounded familiar. She was one of our Folkways reporters. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by the Cornelius Eady Trio, Tim and Dave Bing, John Haywood, Paul Loomis, John Ingram, and John Blissard. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, focusing on students' futures. Classes available at concord.edu/apply.
It's clouded now, but it'll pass by. 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 All those years, all that blood and tears. It's clouded now,